During the 16th to 17th centuries, several Jesuit missionaries and scholars were sent to China in order to gain knowledge of its culture. Most notably were Matteo Ricci, Joachim Bauve, and Ferdinand Verbiest. For our study, we will focus on the work of Bauve and Verbiest, since they are the most relevant to how we've arrived at our prediction. Bauve was a mathematician and a sinologist who studied the Chinese character set. He was one of the 6 Jesuit missionaries sent to China in 1687 by King Louis XIII for trade purposes in order to cover knowledge about China. The French Jesuit was well received by the emperor and began to translate many ancient Chinese classics of Confucius and submersed himself in a complete study of the I Ching. The I Ching, as many know, is the oldest book of recorded history, with scholars dating its first textual form as far back as 5000 BC. Prior to its being scribed in book form, the I Ching was just a set of 64 hexagrams that were considered essential to Chinese tribal societies in their divination rites. There is no theory as to where these 64 hexagrams first originated or what their source of influence was, but we do know from archaeological finds that they were carved onto the backs of turtle shells and used in divination practice during the Neolithic. It wasn't until early Chinese civilization evolved that the 64 hexagrams were given a written explanation. The I Ching, or Book of Changes, contains 32 sections with commentary in book form that explains the fundamental concepts of Taoism and the persistence of change in the natural world. Bouvet was fascinated by this text and produced a French translation that he would later pass on to the German philosopher Leibniz. His original interest in the I Ching was with its similarities to biblical exegesis. Bouvet noted that the I Ching encompassed a system of thought directly comparable to the larger body of Christian theology. When he returned to France, Bouvet engaged in an extensive correspondence with Leibniz, detailing his analysis of the I Ching and its relation to Christian theology. Leibniz himself was also a theologist, philosopher, and mathematician. He was also the first European to invent the binary calculus, as well as the first functional calculating machine. Just as Bouvet was recognizing the philosophy of his own native Christianity in the I Ching, his German colleague Leibniz was relating the presence of binary arithmetic in the hexagrams. He became so fond of the Chinese classic that he even produced his own binary version of the King Wen sequence that decodes the closed and broken lines of the 64 hexagrams into binary digits of zeros and ones. Everything that had been learned about the I Ching in the correspondence between Leibniz and Bouvet would later be recorded into book form as part of the documents of the Jesuit College of Rome, overseen by the Jesuits General. Ferdinand Verbiest was a mathematician, engineer, and astronomer. He was sent by an order from Rome to execute a mission to China. His mission was accompanied by a large group of other Jesuits, many of whom were sent as cultural hegemons to spread Christian doctrine in China. Among them was fellow astronomer Adam Schall, who worked alongside Verbiest during their stay at the imperial court. Verbiest underwent several struggles with the imperial court in an effort to reform their astronomy and calendar system to accept the solar year over the traditional Chinese lunar months. The 1670 calendar included an extra month unnecessarily, added to hide other errors and to bring the lunar month in line with the solar year. Verbiest suggested to the emperor that the errors should be corrected and that the extra month should be dropped from their calendar. The emperor agreed, and with this out of the way, they began work on the astronomical table, sketching out all the lunar and solar eclipses for the next 2,000 years. He also upgraded and helped build a large observatory in Beijing. Following these achievements, Verbiest also began to study the I Ching from a copy given to him by the Emperor Qing Shengzhou. Verbiest's interest in the I Ching had mostly to do with geometry and numbers relating to the King Wen sequence with its 64 hexagrams. What Verbiest recovered from the I Ching was a symmetric pattern between both the numbers system of the 32 sets of 3-line hexagrams and the 64 sets of 6-line hexagrams. Deriving from the mathematics of Pythagoras and Euclid, Verbiest located the universal pattern inside the I Ching that may explain both its origins and its high rate of accuracy for prediction and divinatory power. What was hidden inside the King Wen sequence was a mathematical symmetry similar in many ways to fractals. The hexagrams were converted to hexagons and their disjoint trigrams into triangles. The numbers 3 and 6 were the basis of Verbiest's number theory. He took additive numbers from even and odd sequences and divided them continuously to come up with a set of tables, each containing 64 rows of 5 and 7 columns. Every row contained a value number that could be transformed into a trigonometric graph. He began with the numbers 3 and 6, and by adding 3 and 3 together produced 6. Adding 3 and 6 gives 9. Adding 3 and 4 gives 7. The most commonly occurring numbers were 3, 4, 6, 7, and 9. Verbiest had fitted these numerical values to include the precessional cycles of the 13-month lunar calendar of the Chinese. Hence, he had provided the first astronomical interpretation of the I Ching hexagrams by integrating astronomy within the geometric transform found within the hexagrams. Based on this geometric sequence of values, a 2,000-year timescale was developed alongside the tabulated series of values for all the hexagrams. Initially, this was intended to be an esoteric work of Verbiest's mathematical and astronomical investigations. Verbiest worked in a manner reminiscent of the notebooks of Leonardo da Vinci. In fact, aside from his interest in astronomy and math, he had also constructed the world's first functioning automobile. A system was devised between Verbiest, Leibniz, and Beauvais, which revealed a universal pattern within the I Ching that corresponded to natural events and a way to control the course of history. The Jesuits' secret society used this knowledge to coordinate their global missions, as well as plot so-called conspiracies, until they were ousted by the Pope in 1773 when the Freemasons took over. The Freemasons used it to organize their own agenda, to calculate when and where to act politically or instrumentally to gain some global advantage in power structure. Today, this hidden code can be found in a computer software program known as Timewave Zero that was released by Terence McKenna based on formulas he was given in 1974. Many may ask where he had obtained this knowledge, whether he discovered it independently or whether he worked with Jesuit intellectuals is not known to the public. The default settings on Timewave Zero are based on a 2012 Mayan calendar zero date of December 25, 2012, with a wave factor of 64. The traditional astronomical maps that were used by the Masons were all 1-to-1 ratios, 11 plus 11 and 33. As is known, the number 33 appears in a lot of Masonic lore. When the wave factor in the program is set to 33, and using the Gregorian calendar, set the zero date to 11/1/2011, or November 1st, 2011, and you will see that the last major annex or compression point in the wave of history is exactly 1/1/2000, January 1st, 2000, or Y2K. When you eliminate the 5-day margin of error, it gives 11/5/2011, November 5th, 2011, as the end of history, with 1/5/2000, January 5th, 2000, being the last highest point of novelty. This then places the final compression point to January 5th. On January 5th of the year 2000, There was a triangle-shaped UFO sighted in Illinois, which was the largest media event that had occurred on that day. See the abstract from a report of the investigation by the National Institute for Discovery Science on the 2000 Illinois UFO sighting. Whether this has any eventual link to Sears Tower is uncertain, but if McKenna's novelty theory is correct, then it could be part of a plot. I highly recommend anyone who wishes to fully understand the importance of this theory and why I believe the date to be accurate to definitely download Terence McKenna's Timewave Zero software first and adjust the settings as shown here in the pink outlinings. If you have a PC, then go download the software.
We have just folded space from X. Many machines on X. Better than those on Bridges. Transparent. I see many things.